All right, this is where we finished yesterday. Moshe is repeating the whole Torah to the Jewish people, and he's adding some things on also to prepare them to enter the land of Israel. And here he's repeating the Ten Commandments, in which that, of course, is the central event in Judaism and, in fact, in the whole history of the world. It says that if the Jews would not have received the Torah, then God would have turned the whole world back to confusion. Like it says, Bayom HaShishi, it's talking about the sixth day of Sivan, when God gave the Torah, that the whole world was dependent on that day. So Moses is repeating this to the Jewish people as they come into the land of Israel to give them an extra inspiration to continue this connection with God. So it says, Ata Oreis Ladas, God showed you that you should know that Hashem Elohim, that God, He is the power that creates the world. Elohim is the power that creates the world. And there's nothing except for Him. There is nothing except for God. That's what He says. God showed you Himself on Mount Sinai in order that you should know, in order that you should think deeply. That we learned that yesterday. Let's just continue on. And it says, Mina Shemayim, from the heavens, God let you hear His voice in order liyasreka, in order to torture you. What does that mean? In order to torture you, that the Jewish people weren't able to accept the revelation. It was too good the way they are, so they had to clean themselves. Here it says the Orach Chaim liyasreka, to torture you. What does it mean? Lamarek, to clean off zuhumatcha, your impurities. Zaya siba lahavarat mehem et zuma. This is the reason God spoke to them, in order to get rid of all of their egotism. Kamo shekatam, like we already wrote many times. Ve chetvorot tashlum asara. All the Jews heard from God were the first of the 10 commandments, the first two of the 10 commandments. And then they said, we can't take it anymore. But as it explains in the Tanya, the first two of the 10 commandments, that includes the whole entire Torah. The first commandment is to believe in God. And the second one is don't worship idols. In other words, there's things that God does want and there's things that God doesn't want. Because a person might think that, what does God care what you do? I mean, you do it for your own benefit. You're not, what did God cares what you do? It makes a difference to Him. So it says, yes, it does make a difference to God. There's things that God does not want you to do. You have to refrain from, because it interferes with your connection with Him. There's things that are forbidden, and that's the first two of the 10 commandments. Nevertheless, when the Jews heard the first two, they said, enough, we can't take it anymore. The Rebbe is going, the Torah will explain this after the 10 commandments, that the Jews refused. They couldn't take any more. So the first two, that was to purify them. And the other 8, the word is Tashlum Asar, which completed the 10, they heard them from the Devarim Atzmi Sheyetzu Aaron Me'adon Baruch Hu. Says that the last ones they heard from Moshe. The first two they heard directly from God. And the last 8 they heard also directly from God, but through the mouth of Moshe. That's what it says. Ala oretz erecha. That's what it says. On the earth you have seen all these fires, and there was thunders and fires and etc. And those verified that the whole thing was coming from God. The words came from fire. It says, "The word of Shemata mitoch eish." You heard the words coming from in the fire. What does it mean? This is talking about the other 8 utterances that God spoke, that the Jewish people said they didn't want to hear. It said, nevertheless, it really came from the fire. What does it mean from the fire? That it was the angel. They could see there was an angel of fire that was saying the other 8 words. Those are the words that were coming from Moshe. So the 10 commandments, in other words, were different than all the rest, even though they only heard directly the first two, but all the rest, according to what the Or HaChaim says, they also came from the fire. It was an angel speaking, not directly Hashem speaking. But here, the Sophrona says that the 10 commandments were given to the Jewish people, at least the first two of the 10 commandments were given to the Jewish people in order to liasreka, to torture. What does it mean, torture you? To bring you to the level of prophecy. When you receive the Torah, like we see that Elijah the prophet, in a ruach gadol of chazak, there was a tremendous wind, bekan ala oretz harekat esho, and also down here on the earth, he showed you his fire. In other words, there was the story about Elijah the prophet when he ran away from Achav and Izebel, as he went up to a mountain, and it said that there was a fire and there was a wind and there was a storm, and he said, and God was not in the fire and the storm. And then a voice came to him, a small voice. So there's all these, what were all these things? It's a very scary thing. All the Jewish people were there, and they were at all apparent understanding they were about to die. God was speaking to them. Everything was fire, and that was it. It was very frightening. And then from that came the voice of God. Why did it have to be that way? In order to tell them that they had to shake off their normal personalities in order to accept the word of God. So that's what it means, to bring them to the level of prophecy. Prophecy means that you don't do it. You're just a vessel, and you leave all of your worries and your thoughts and your fears and your desires, and God speaks through you, right? Not everybody could reach to that level of purity, but at Mount Sinai, everybody did because of the fire and etc. Because God loved your forefathers, and he chose in the seed of the forefathers after them, and therefore, and therefore God took you out because of them, the promises that he made to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He took you out of Egypt to inherit, to overtake these tremendous nations that took over the land of Israel. Mimcha mipanecha, says what? That God gave you all the 31 kings that were in Israel, and God is going to conquer them also. But up to now, of course, they conquered Sichon and Og, and they also defeated the Midianites. So it says, Kasher, just like you see the day, so you can see clearly that it was God that was speaking to you on Mount Sinai. But Yadata Yom, of this sentence here is the basis of the second book of the Tanya. V'yadata Yom, you should know today, and take it to your heart. Ki Hashem Elokim, that God is the creator of everything in the heavens and above in the earth. There's nothing except for God. God is creating everything. There's no existence except for him. So the Balatorim. The Or HaChaim. You should know today, you have to know what you knew, what you should put to your heart. What is it? The intention is that you have to humble yourself so that you'll feel the same way now as you did back then on Mount Sinai. I would like to do this Or HaChaim, but we have to do the 10 commandments. And I don't think we'll get to it if we do all these. What you should put to your heart. It says you should put levavecha. It says you should put it to your hearts. You should put it not only to your godly soul, but also to your Yetzer Tov and your Yetzer Hara. In other words, even your selfish impulse should also feel that it's being created by God. Some people say, no, it's talking about that in the future, that God will bring the devil. Devil is a creation, right? And he'll kill it in front of the Jewish people. But see, Moshe, And Moshe was command. Now, what is the devil? The devil is your evil impulses and thoughts. So, why do people do bad things? Because all sorts of these stupid ideas come popping into your mind. Steal, lust, murder, anger, confusion. All these impulses come into your mind that you have to fight against, or you have to ignore, whatever. So it says in the future there won't be these stupid thoughts. I heard once a saying that the difference between a crazy person and a normal person is that a crazy person does what a normal person thinks. It was stupid thoughts come through your mind for a second, but a crazy person, he latches onto these thoughts. Oh, I have this thought that must be right. I am the Lord. So that's called the devil. The devil is the one that gives these thoughts, and God wants it to be that way, so that you'll have a challenge. But in the future, it says God will say, "Okay, enough. I see that first of all, the devil. I never thought you would. The devil would win every single match. I figure once in a while, and it says that God will destroy the devil in front of everybody. That's what it means. Take it to your heart. You should know today and take it to your heart. Moshe commanded that a person should always think, remember that great day that's going to be in the first, that's going to be in the future, that God is going to, says, take out his sword and destroy all evil and destructiveness and etc. That you should put into your heart, and therefore don't pay attention to your selfish evil impulses, because they're going to be destroyed anyway. They're going to be negated in the future anyway. It says also you should remember and put it to your heart, what? The day of judgment, when all of the dead will rise up and they'll all be judged, it says. Then all of the bad things that happen will be revealed. All the bad things a person did will be revealed to him in the future. Therefore, this is what you have to think about and raise. How can you remember that? Because it says at Mount Sinai, everybody died and God renewed their soul. So this is a hint that it's going to happen in the future also. All right, let's just go a little bit further because I want to get to the 10 Commandments. Very beautiful, the Orach Chaim. In the second book of the Tanya, you should know today and put it to your heart. It says this is what Moses wanted to implant in the hearts of all the Jewish people, that they should all be like tzaddikim, but it didn't really work. So therefore he told everybody they have to just learn what it says in this book, in the second book of the Tanya, and you have to think and meditate and contemplate on the greatness of Hashem against your nature. Moshe wanted to change everybody's nature. But okay, you should watch the commandments that I'm going to give you today, that it will be good for you and your children after you, in order that you'll have a long life on this land that God is giving you for all time. For all time. So if someone comes and says, the land of Israel, where do you have a deed that the land of Israel belongs to you? So you just say, here it is. God promised it to Moses. Before that, he also promised it to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So that's the land that God promised. That's why we're here, not because there were people living here or because we made the first claim on it or anything. God made a promise, that's all. In addition to that, we also made a claim and we were living here from before. All right. So let's go further. This is the Torah that Moses put before the Jewish people. This one, Zuhu, this is the one that it's going to be, which one mentioned now. We're going to talk about it right now. Which is the Torah? Here we go. Ready? These are the laws which Moshe spoke to the Jewish people. Oh. Vayikra Moshe. So here we go. These are the 10 commandments. Moses called the Jewish people, and he said to them, now remember the 10 commandments had been given like 38 years earlier, and Moses is just repeating it. These Moshe spoke more 39 years earlier, right? 60 days, 90 days after they got out of Egypt. They received the Torah. Okay, it wasn't really exactly 90 because that's when that's when they heard the 10 Commandments. It was 90 days afterwards. But 40 days after that, Moses broke the tablets, and then he had to go up for another 40 days, and then another 40, the third 40 days, Moses came down with the second tablet. So it ended up that they received the Torah like almost a half a year after they left Egypt. That's when they got the second tablets, and Yom Kippur they received. So a little more than half a year. Moses, sorry, a little less than half a year. They got out of Egypt on the 15th of Nisan, and 6 months later, minus like 5 days, was Yom Kippur. That's when they received the Torah. Moses spoke to the Jewish people and he said to them, listen to the Jews, listen, Jews, all these laws that I am speaking in your ears today. Now, Moshe is repeating, right? He's repeating what happened 49 years earlier. Keep them, watch them, and guard what I'm saying. Why did Moses have to call the people? What do you mean he called them all together? It says, Moses, was always speaking to all the Jewish people. Why is this time all of a sudden he had to gather them? So says Or HaChaim, maybe because they were busy conquering Sichon and Og and the Midianites and etc. And therefore the Jewish people were sort of scattered around in all these different places. Therefore Moshe had to get their attention and call them back over together. Or maybe up to now, Moshe would speak only to the men. But what he wants to now say the 10 Commandments, so he called also the women and the children and everyone because they were all there at Mount Sinai. And he wants to repeat to them and remind them what they heard at Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai was for everybody. Okay, God, your God, made for you a covenant at Mount Sinai. Chorev is Mount Sinai. It's another name, Chorev. He made for you a covenant. Not with your forefathers did God make this bris, this covenant, but with us, all of us here today. And now we're going to have an argument between Rashi and Or HaChaim. Says not with your forefathers, it means not only with your forefathers did God make this decree, but he made it with them and also us. Says the Or HaChaim, it can't be. If so, you didn't have to even say anything. Just if it was not, if God made the covenant with the fathers and with us, the same one, so you don't have to say that, right? Not only our father, just say God made a covenant with you. That's all. Look and see. Rashi says, Bilvad, God says, not with your fathers did God make this covenant, but with you. Says Rashi says, Bilvad, not only with your forefathers did God make this covenant. It says it's a little bit of a question. If that's what it meant, so he didn't have to say anything. It must be that here he's talking about a new covenant that God is making. What's the new covenant? That he will not put his Shekhinah on any of the other nations. So it comes along the Christians, the Muslims, the Buddhists, the who knows what, and they say, God spoke to you, he also spoke to us. So you can say, okay, listen, you can say whatever you want to, but the fact is it's not so. What you heard was something other than God. Can't be God. Because God at Mount Sinai made a covenant with the Jewish people. He would never speak with another nation except for a nation. There were individuals that he spoke to, right? He spoke to Bilam. It says he spoke to Bilam. But generally speaking, God will never give a message for another nation, and he'll never put his Shekhinah, his presence, on another nation except for the Jewish people. Here he says another interesting thing, or HaChaim again, that God made a covenant with you. Here it says, God made a covenant with you. Which covenant exactly? Right? God made a covenant. Karati mechan brit. He made a covenant. Now, what is a covenant, by the way? A covenant means that a person makes an agreement, let's say between two people. It means no matter what happens, we're going to keep this agreement. no matter what it is. So here the Or HaChaim says it doesn't explain which covenant it is. There were a lot of covenants that God made with the Jewish people, right? God made this covenant. Which covenant is he referring to? It doesn't, Moshe's not explaining which covenant this is. Is it the one that God made, like in Parshat Shemot, when he gave the Torah, it says, there is the Dama Brit, right before the Torah was given. So it said that God made a covenant in blood with all the Jewish people on all these things. Or maybe it's talking about the covenant that God made with the Jews, that he would never exchange them for another nation. Like it says, Anochi Kreit Brit, right? Maybe that's the covenant. This was after they sinned with the golden calf. God said, I'm making a covenant. And Rashi said that God made a covenant that he would not rest his presence on, on any other nation. Says the Or HaChaim, my logic tells me that this is the one that he's speaking about. This is the covenant. That God is making a covenant, what? That he's always going to be with the Jews and he will never put his presence on another nation. Okay, here we have an interesting sentence, and here's the 10 Commandments. Here it goes, ready, but right before, panim, face to face, God spoke with you on the mountain from the fire, face to face. So if anybody says, no, the Jews just heard God, it's not so. The Jewish people saw God. Omer Rabbi Birchia, this is what Moshe said. Don't say ani mat'eotchem. Don't say that I'm doing some sort of a trick and you heard all sorts of voices. Kaderech hasarsar, like a salesman, that he is between the seller and the buyer. Don't think that's a salesman. He can say anything, right? He doesn't have to. You can't see if he's lying or if he's not lying. He just, oh, sure, best car in the world, never driven by anybody. And really, the fact of the matter is the motor has changed and everything has changed. But the salesman, a used car salesman, classic, he can say anything. So he says, you'll never notice that he's lying, or if he's lying or not. He's just a good salesman. So Moshe said to the Jewish people, don't say that I'm just like a used car salesman, that I'm trying to sell you something false. Because what you saw on Mount Sinai, you saw the seller himself. God himself spoke to you. Face to face, the two pays are double. Panim, the panim. To say that God showed himself with a smiling face, a shining face, and a smiling face. Mount Sinai. Anochi Amod, I stood between you, between God and between you at that time to say the words of God. Why? The first two commandments you heard directly from God. And afterwards, you didn't want to hear any more directly from God. Why not? I had to do all the talking. Because you were afraid of the fire. Well, and you didn't want to go to the mountain on the mountain. And therefore I said, Lamor, I said to you, God said, you didn't want to hear anymore. This is what you heard. You heard only the first two commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. First of the 10 commandments. I am God, your God, that took you from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. Rashi. What happened? All right. I am God. This is the same exact thing that says in the first of the 10 commandments. Lo yelecha. This is the second commandment. These first two they heard directly from God. Lo yelecha elokim acherim. You should not have any other gods on my face. What does it mean on my face? On my face before me. Rashi. On my face. B'kol makom. Any place where I am, you should not worship any other God. Where is God? Kol olam, the whole world. That's one explanation. Al panai. Another one, in other words, don't think that you can hide somewhere. Another explanation. Kol zaman sheni kayem. Al panai means as long as I exist, you shouldn't worship any other God. Of course, God is eternal. He's in every place, omnipresent, and what is it? He's always existing. Asara Devoros, the Ten Commandments, says Rashi, I already explained to you in Parshas Yisro. Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel, don't make any forms, no pictures of anything in heaven, on the earth, or on the water which is under the earth. Don't bow down to them. Don't serve them, because Anochi, I am God, your God, and I am a jealous God, and I will visit the sins of the fathers on the sons. And Rashi explains, if the sons repeat the sins of the fathers, so God multiplies it, the sin, to the al shlishim al rivim, the 30th and the 40th generation, to those that I hate. Right? They won't get away from me. Sometimes God says, I'll leave it. We see that in the temple, for instance, the temple, that God put off his punishment for a long time, right? 410 years until he finally punished the Jewish people. So it took a long time. It says, but in the end, if you don't do what I want, you get punished. But the punishment is 30 or 40. But kindness, God holds kindness for la'alafim, to the thousands, to those who I love and those who do my commandments. Shabbos, next one is going to be Shomeres Yom HaShabbos, the thing about Shabbos. This Shabbos comes right after what it says, don't take my name in vain. Wait, I'm sorry, let's do it again. God says, I will do kindness to the thousandth generations. I'll keep doing kindness. You do one good deed, it could last, that deed, the merits for thousands of generations. Okay. Second commandment. First commandment is believe in God. Second commandment is don't worship anything else. Third commandment, don't take my name in vain. Lo tisa Hashem Hashem Elokecha b'leshava. Don't take my name in vain. You're not even supposed to say, God in a bed. You stub your toe. Don't say, oh God. Not supposed to say God's name. Use God's name, even in a foreign language. Ki lo yenakeh Hashem, because God will not clean, will not forgive anyone that takes his name in vain. And afterwards it says the commandment, keep my Shabbat. Why does it put Shabbat right next to Shabbat as the fourth of the 10 commandments? Lo tisa, because both of them, it says, l'chalel et shem kodshi. Lo tishba'u l'shmi b'sheker v'chilalta. And chalalta, one who, halal means to make a mundane, to belittle. It also means to make a hole, to empty out. So if you use God's name, just sort of casually, then it means that God is like anything else in the world. And that makes God cheap. And that's forbidden to do. Don't take God's name, l'shava, for nothing. Explains another place that it also means, let's see where I can find this. It means don't take God's name in vain. Also means when you do the commandments. Oh, here it goes. Shomer the Shomer Tzmasai. It says, God does kindness to the thousands and those who do my commandments. And then right after that, it says, don't take my name in vain. Says the Balaturim, why did God put this prohibition of taking his name in vain right after what it says, and do all my commandments? It says it's coming to tell you that even if you do my commandments, but it could be that you're doing the commandments, but it could be that you're taking God's name in vain. Why? Because sha'osa mitzvah, if you do a commandment, shalo l'shem shemayim, not for the sake of God. You're doing a commandment because you want to be part of the congregation, or you do a commandment because you want to go to heaven, or you want to get rewards, or you want to. You're just doing it automatically. You just every day you wake up, you put on tefillin. You just do it. So it says, if you do that, and especially if you make a blessing, it's as though you're taking God's name in vain. In other words, you're not doing it for God. So what are you doing it for? You're doing it for nothing. That's called taking God's name in vain. Or shemazir shelo la'avor alo tisa binyan shmirat mitzvot. That if you don't do the commandments, that's already uh, defiling an oath. Why? Because nishbaim l'kaim mitzvahs. Because in Mount Sinai, all the Jewish people swore. They said, "Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll do all the commandments." So they all swore that they'll do it. So if you don't do the commandments, it's like you were there at Mount Sinai, then you're going over this oath. So that's why it says, God does kindness to the thousands, to those who keep his commandments, and don't take my name in vain. Because when you do the commandments, first of all, do them for the sake of God, and second of all, do the commandments. Because if not, then you're taking God's name in vain. You made an oath, or your soul made an oath at Mount Sinai. So there we have the third commandment. The first of the 10 commandments is to worship God, believe in God. Second one is don't believe in anything else. Don't worship anything else. The third command, which God are you supposed to believe in? Also, the God that took the Jews out of Egypt and the God that's giving them the Torah. Right? The one God who's speaking now, giving them the Torah at Mount Sinai. I'm the same God who took you out of Egypt. The fourth commandment is also going to give us another little hint about what God you're supposed to worship. The God that creates the heavens and the earth. Right? Here, now it's an interesting thing. In the first 10 commandments, in the 10 commandments that are written in Yitro, as there it says you could keep the day of Shabbos because God created the world in 6 days and on Shabbat he rested. But here it doesn't say that, and we'll explain why. Shomer et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, really that's the same thing. You'll see why. The fourth commandment of the 10, keep the Shabbat day in order to sanctify it, like God commanded you. What does it mean, like God commanded you? Where did God command you? It says at Mara. There were commandments that God gave before the giving of the Torah. When he says Kasher Tziva, when did he command it? It says Kodem Matan Torah, before Matan Torah at Mara. It says at Mara, God gave the Jews several commandments. It also said he gave them the 7 Noahide commandments also were given at Mara. Once again, here it says Shomer et Yom HaShabbat. If we look over in there in Yitro, we'll see it says Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. So Rashi says, Ubrishona, the first time it said Zachor et Yom, remember the day of Shabbat. And here it says Zachor Shamor et Yom HaShabbat. No, it's not that Moses forgot. Both of them were really said in one word, Ubeteva Achas. They were said somehow or other. The Jewish people heard both. God said both. Ubeshmiya Achas, and all the Jewish people heard. God said it at once, and the Jewish people heard it once. What does it mean? Keep the day of Shabbos like I commanded you before Matan Torah at Mara. God commanded. It's going to say the same thing about honoring your mother and father also. Here's an interesting thing. Shomer et Yom HaShabbat. Rosh Tevat, Sia, Shin. What is Sia? I have no idea. I had to look it up. And there's like different, it's a very strange thing, but it means destruction. And the Sof Tev is Retem or Rotem. Rotem is like something like fire or coals or something. Also, I looked that up. It didn't have any meaning to it. Anyway, it's coming to tell you that those people who are suffering in hell, right? Those people who are suffering and being burned in hell and with destruction and coals of flame, as on Shabbat, they don't get punished. So Shomer Yom Shabbat. On Shabbat, there is none of this punishment. Even the fires of hell they cool off on Shabbat. So it's a happy day for everybody. The Baal Turim. The Sifrono says, the keep the day of Shabbat, Shomer Yom Kadsho. Remember I'm sorry, protect the day of Shabbat to make it holy, like I commanded, like God commanded you, like God commanded. This is Moses speaking, right? Like God commanded you. The Kadsho, what does it mean? The same way that God commanded you at Mara, but before, that was the thing with the water also. The water became bitter and Moses threw a stick in it. It says, Sham Choko Mishpat Sham Niso. It says in Maraki, Amnam. There were things that God gave before the giving of the Torah, and one of them also was what's called the Sefer Abrit. It was also that from the book of Breshit until Shmot, all those stories were also given by God to Moshe, but they weren't given. They were given, it's Mount Sinai also, everything, but some of them were given before also. So they were given like double. And when it was given at Sinai, it had a double importance. Kiyam Netziva al Shabbat, and also at Mara, God commanded on Shabbat to let you it shouldn't be enough to make it holy in Bima Shetshuvos Po Mimalach, that you Shetushbos, that you stop from doing work. Ella, but Aval Shetasak Bo, you should on Shabbat, you should kadsho, you should have to make it holy. You have to work in Torah and the commandments, like it says, V'hayasher be'enav ta'aseh, v'hazan ta'im mitzvosav. That's what it says. You should not just shomer at Yom HaShabbos, don't do any work on Shabbat, but also kadsho. You also have to learn Torah and do commandments in order that your servant and your maidservant should rest. You have to remember that you were a servant in Egypt. This thing of making your animal rest is in order that your servant should rest. And your servant should rest is to remind you that in Egypt, you were a servant like that. And that God made it that you don't have to be a servant anymore. So that you allow your servant to rest, reminding you that you once were that servant, that God took you out of Egypt and he allowed you to rest. 6 days you should work and do all 6 days you should work and do all of the things you need to, all of the buildings and things. And the 7th day is a Shabbat to God. Don't do any work. You, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maidservant, your ox, your donkey, all of your animals, the gercha, the non-Jews that are with you, they shouldn't do work for you. Laman yanuach avdecha, in order that your servant should work, should rest just like you do. So it says a very interesting thing, that why really was it necessary to have a different reason over here? What was wrong with the first reason? The first time that God gave the Torah, he said, keep the Shabbat, and I'm sorry, in Yitro, when it tells the story, God says, keep the day of Shabbat, because God created the world. God rested. You should rest because God created the world in 6 days. The 7th day, you rest. And over here, it says, no, keep the Shabbat because God took you out of Egypt. Okay, first of all, what's the connection? I mean, so God took us out of Egypt. Why do we have to keep Shabbat? We should do all the commandments because God took us out. Why especially Shabbat? So here it says one reason is that in Shabbat, when you were in Egypt, you were slaves. And you had to work all the time. So God took you out. Now you're not slaves anymore. But it says even more. When God took the Jews out of Egypt, let's see if I can find this, where this is. No. It says like this, that when the Jews got out of Egypt, so then there was a whole new importance to the idea of Shabbat. The whole importance of Shabbat. When the Jewish people were in Egypt, so it's true, it says that according to some opinions, they kept Shabbat when they were in Egypt also. But when they got out of Egypt, then they were free to tell the whole world about the Creator, and free to tell the whole world that they are the Creator's people. And then Shabbat became a totally different, it had a different importance. That now the Jewish people, they are advertising to the whole world that there's a Creator, and that's their job. And that's, interestingly enough, why non-Jews are not supposed to keep the Shabbat. They're not supposed to keep the Shabbat. And the reason that non-Jews are not supposed to keep the Shabbat is because it was specially given to us, like we say, to make it holy. When was it given to us? When we got out of Egypt. As soon as we got out of Egypt, then suddenly we were free. We're like connected to the creator. We're not part of the creation anymore. So that's what you have to remember, that you were servants in Egypt and God took you out with a powerful hand. Therefore, God commanded you that you should keep the day of Shabbat. One second, give me a second here. Orach Chaim. That's what the Orach Chaim says over here. That's what he says. If you ask, why did God leave out the reason that he said, gave over there in Yitro, that 6 days God created the heavens and the earth? The reason is because Tama mitzvah ikara, that the reason for this commandment is is not because of the obligation. When God gave the commandment in the beginning, he was just letting them know something. God worked 6 days, created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day he rested, right? So therefore, you should emulate God, but that's not the commandment. The commandment didn't come yet. The commandment, the obligation of believing in God and Shabbat. Now, Shabbat is a very interesting commandment. It's not like any other. If a Jew does not keep Shabbat, then in many ways, it just negates his Judaism. For instance, a person that does not keep Shabbat cannot be a shochet, cannot be a ritual slaughterer. And it's one of the few commandments that if you don't keep Shabbat, the punishment is death, just like idolatry. And that's what it says, like what the rabbis say, and they wrote it in another place. When the Jews got out of Egypt, there was revealed to the world the faith in the creation of the world. Then everybody saw that there's a creator and that God controls the whole entire world. That's what it means God took you out of Egypt, because that's the proof that God is the master of all and that he was really the one that created the world. So before that, you said, okay, God creates the world. Sure, you have your theory. Everybody has their theories about how the world was created, right? There may be there's all these the other theories that that there was light, there was a big bang. So we also have our theories. But when God took the Jews out of Egypt, then he showed the world clearly that in fact he's the master of the world. And then you can get the idea of really what the importance of Shabbat is. Okay, that's the fourth commandment. Fifth commandment: honor your father and your mother like God commanded you, in order that you should have a long life on the land that God was. So in other words, God is saying you should have a mother and a father. Family is of utmost importance, but nevertheless, Shabbat is more important. If your father or mother tell you not to keep Shabbat, you could say, listen, what can I do? You're just the fifth commandment, and keeping Shabbat is before you. Fourth commandment, God commanded me to keep Shabbat. Don't murder. Don't ni'af. It says don't take somebody else's wife. That's niuf. That's what Rashi says. Don't ni'af. Niuf is only eshes ish. To have, God forbid, relations with a woman that's already married. Lo tignov, don't steal. Don't steal means don't steal people. Don't kidnap. That's what it means. Lo ta'aneh re'achad et shakar. Don't give false testimony. Now we have what honoring your mother and father. That was the fifth commandment. Sixth is don't kill. Don't have sexual relationships. Take a married woman. That's number 6 and number 7. Don't kidnap. That's number 8 and number 9. Don't answer. Don't false witness. Don't give false witness on your friend. These would love to explain, but we can't. Don't desire things. Don't have lust. This is you're not punishable for this because there's no action, but it is a prohibition. Don't desire your next door neighbor's wife. Don't desire his house, his field, his servant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey. You might think, oh, but I can desire his car, his boat, right? Call asher yorecha. Everything that your friend owns, don't. Okay, so let's just do this one more thing, and then we've actually gone over the time, but it was enjoyable. All of these words, that's the 10 commandments. All these words God spoke on the mountain from the fire and the cloud and the mist, whatever it is, a tremendous voice, velo yasaf. The Rebbe has a beautiful sikha about this. Says he gives a lot of different reasons, but I just want to say one. Kol gadol yasaf, you heard a loud voice and it never stopped. Says Rashi, lo yasaf, lo pasak, it never stopped. Because God, it was strong and it existed forever. There's another explanation that says that didn't stop means that there was no echo. And the Rebbe said, what type of a miracle is that? He says, no echo means that it permeated everything in the world and it permeated all time. So since the Torah was given, the 10 commandments, and in the 10 commandments, also the 7 Noahide commandments, it permeated all mankind. Every human being in the world knows, every human being for all time knows that the Torah is true, that God gave the Torah. Everyone knows it. Everyone, their conscience knows it. Down deep, everyone is sure of it. No doubts. The problem is that there's all these things that cover over and that confuse and etc. And that's one of the reasons why people hate the Jews, because they know the Torah is true and they know that it forces them to act in accordance to the Torah. And people don't want to be told what to do. You're not going to tell me what to do. That's why it says Mount Sinai is Sina, hatred. Hatred came to the world to hate the Jews because of the Torah. There's other reasons also, but that's sufficient. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, hope to see you tomorrow at 8:15. Shalom uvracha.